Anyway, good afternoon. This afternoon's session is the key elements of a successful job hazard activity analysis policy. I'm your moderator this afternoon. My name is Mike Baker. I'm with Smart Drive Systems out of San Diego. Short description of this session, right into job hazard analysis, or JHA as most of you guys call it, isn't as simple as just writing down steps that need to be performed on a particular task. It takes planning your work. Planning your work is very profitable for your company, but safety planning task using a properly constructed written JHA is invaluable to the well-being of your employees. We encourage you to join in the session this afternoon and engage with our speaker this afternoon and discuss these very important topics, not only for yourself, but also for your crews and those who rely on you to keep them safe. In this session, we'll cover learning the key skills that help you in identifying and evaluating the potential hazards in your present situations. Learn the fundamentals of seeing with safety eyes, and you'll learn more about that in a few minutes, and gain appreciation for the skills that it takes to identify and mitigate risk within your organizations and on your job sites. Our speaker this afternoon is Jason Rogels. Jason is currently the shop manager for Trailer Brothers, a position that he's held since 2009. Prior to becoming shop manager, Jason also held various positions with Trailer Brothers in heavy equipment mechanic field. Jason holds several crane certifications and was also honored by the Construction Equipment Magazine's Under 40 in Construction Equipment Award, showcasing the young talent in the construction equipment industry. If you would, please help me welcome Jason. Jason?
Thank you. Today, the screen says key elements of successful activity hazard analysis, and I'd like to thank AEMP for letting me put this on. It's kind of near and dear to my heart. I think it's a first-line approach that everyone can do, regardless of where you are in the safety spectrum, that can make a huge impact. We'd like to give a shout-out to Kirby, who leaned over, there you are, after his presentation this morning and said it's lonely up here. You're correct. It's lonely. You're right. Anyway, let's get on. What's an activity hazard analysis? Let's start pretty basic. First and foremost, it's a technique that focuses on a particular job task, looks at identifying the hazards before they occur. Keyword here is being technique. That's defined as skill, an ability, or proficiency. With that being said, that skill or method can be honed and improved upon. It also focuses on the relationships between the worker, the task, the tool, and the environment. When you get those four things together, each one individually is a potentially dangerous situation. And when you get those formed together, they become very complex. They need to be looked at. After you identify the uncontrolled hazards in your particular task, you'll be able to take steps to mitigate that risk and lower it to an acceptable level of risk. Maybe not totally do away with it, but at least lower it down to where you can get your hands around it, you're okay with working under those conditions, and you can do it safely. A hazard is defined as simply the potential for harm. It's a condition or activity that's left uncontrolled can result in an injury or illness, and identifying these hazards and eliminating, mitigating, and controlling them as early as in the process as possible will help in preventing injuries, and we've all heard that before. Taking care of the small issues immediately prevents larger and complex issues later. Same principle still applies in activity analysis. I don't know where that is. Okay. Who needs an activity hazard analysis? Employers, foremen, supervisors, craft workers, and everyone. Because it's a proven way to analyze their jobs, tasks, related workplace hazards, and conduct a large step-by-step guideline on how best to mitigate and eliminate that risk. The emphasis being on everyone. This isn't an upper level, it's not a craft worker, it's the entire spectrum. Many workers, or why is the AHA or JHA important? Many workers are injured and killed on a job site every day. Safety can add value to your business, your job, and your life. I want to take out the can add in that sentence and change that to does add. Safety does add value to your business. It can prevent job site injuries by looking at particular options in detail. And on that statement, I'd like to keep the can if done properly. If it's just another piece of paper, as Bruce noted this morning in the keynote, and we don't follow through with the process, it's not going to work. It's going to be another form that just sits on the shelf. So keep that in mind. It can be used to establish proper job procedures. It can be used to teach individuals about the hidden risks that are associated with those tasks. And that all goes back to you don't know what you don't know. So if you can muster up and bring up the risks to the top, you can deal with them. They can be used in training for future risk reduction and can be called upon for accident investigation later. What's the value in all this? It's elimination and prevention of job site injuries that I feel is number one. It furthered fewer job site injuries, which result in safer, more effective work methods, reduces worker comp claims, increases worker production, and it's a valuable tool for training new employees the proper way to carry out their task. As Bruce mentioned this morning, the first 30 to 100 days of a new employee, most likely to get hurt. If we can use these bank of AHAs that we write and use it to train the employees on the task, it filters back into the top, and we can there again work on eliminating and preventing the risk. To be effective, the activity hazard analysis must come from management, as this is a commitment to safety, their pledge to the worker. It mirrors the topic that Bruce talked about this morning. If you're not sincere, if you're not totally committed to the cause, the workers don't see that. The safety isn't helped any. It must be followed through so risk is truly mitigated, and workers must have the ability to correct these hazards once identified. To be effective, employees must be able to take these identified risks to management and have their full support in removing these dangerous conditions. They must have the full support. That's upper level buy-in to make sure that they don't get hurt. If not, management and the AHA practice will lose all credibility, and that's a dangerous path. Again, a keynote topic. What jobs are appropriate for an AHA? Jobs which you or your company have identified with the highest injury rate. It goes back to low-hanging fruit first. What's important? Jobs which have the highest probability to cause severe injury, even when no injury has ever been recorded for that particular task. We're staying in front of this. We're using these to get ahead and prevent injuries. Jobs in which one simple human error could lead to the possibility of a severe accident. I think that's self-explanatory right there. We're all very susceptible to errors, me especially. Jobs that are new to your operation or job site processes. Pay attention to this because it's a change. Any possible change condition should be a red flag. We go steady state through life and we don't often notice that things are changing. When you see a change, stop, draw back. There's a reason something changed. You, the environment, the tool, the machinery, something. Acknowledge that change and just take a brief moment and stop. Stop and find out what the change is. Change might be for the good, but acknowledge the change. Jobs that have had the process changed or altered. We just went over that. A lot of accidents occur because of changing conditions. Recognize it as a flag. Address it immediately. Jobs which are complex enough to require written instructions should have a written plan to mitigate that risk as well. Emphasis being on that slide is if it's important enough that you need to detail it out to someone performing it, take the time and detail the safety steps involved to keep them safe. Writing an activity hazard analysis. Involve your employees. Review your accident history. Conduct a preliminary job review. Set priorities. Outline and list the steps and tasks. Involve your employees. Involve your employees in the process. No one knows the work or the hazards associated with doing that except for them. They're doing it. They've already identified things that are safe, and internally, they're mitigating that risk. So ask them the questions. Their understanding of the task is priceless in finding the root cause analysis. Root cause analysis being the underlined word here. Don't treat the symptoms, treat the condition, we've all heard. So they've already studied how to do their task safely. Ask them, get their buy-in, get their involvement. Involving employees will help minimize any rework with the document. This is a living document, it's made to be changed, but get them in the process so you can eliminate the changes in the beginning. It will assure quality analysis. It will produce the buy-in that's needed for this to truly work, and it will provide a chance for ownership. And ownership in this is key. Everyone's in charge of their safety. Review your job site's history of accidents. Review the history of treatment. Review the close calls or near misses. These are the ahas that can be most effective. Check existing policies to make sure they're adequate for the changing work. Review the close calls, near misses. They are so important. It's a second chance, whether it be a second chance the equipment, a second chance in life, a second chance at keeping a finger. It was a second chance, and everyone needs to learn from those. Write them down, document them, share them. Study those. Those are the ones that you got away with. Conduct a preliminary job review. Openly discuss any hazards that employees know exist in their current setting. Openly discuss. When you can openly discuss an issue, you're willing to take the ownership of that problem, and you're more apt to deal with it. So go ahead and just talk about it. Get it out there. What do we need to do? What's your example? They have probably already assessed the situation or taking the appropriate measures not to get hurt. Ask them those questions. Ask them ways to eliminate the hazards. What are they seeing from doing the task that you might be missing from watching it? Any easy problem should be corrected immediately, and that will demonstrate your commitment to the cause. Conduct a preliminary job review. Correcting the small items first will allow you to spend the needed time on solving the big issues. For the larger, more complex hazards, evaluate what is acceptable and work to mitigate those findings. Use the win theory, so what's important now. Find out what in the process or the task is unacceptable. There might be items in there that are acceptable. Concentrate on the ones that aren't. List your priorities and apply the win theory to any unacceptable task. Base your priorities on what is most likely to occur first and with the most severity. These should be mitigated immediately, as your exposure is very great in this phase. If you acknowledge there's a problem, you have to correct that problem immediately. Chances are it might be something very big in the beginning, but let's get it off the plate, correct it, get everybody headed in the right direction. Every job can be broken down to steps. Watch the employee perform that task and list each step. You can evaluate a hazard. You can't evaluate any hazard you don't know anything about. And keep the steps simple and manageable, or else they simply won't be followed. Get input from employees who have performed the same job. Compare angles. What did someone else see that others overlooked? Varying degrees of what's important or varying degrees of people's safety threshold. What do they deem that safety that maybe you didn't? You get those angles. Put that into a triangle. Include the employee in all phases of the AHA development. Review the steps and be open for continued discussion. Include pictures or video when appropriate. Remember, that not everyone reads, not everyone comprehends on your level. The key is we get the information out there. The form, the list, the sentence, doesn't matter. It's that they get it and they get it done and they can do it safely. Identifying workplace hazards. What can go wrong? What are the consequences if something was to happen? Where will the hazard come from? What are the contributing factors? And how likely is that this hazard will occur? Describe a hazard in the following way. Where is it happening? That could be an environment. Just over here, the entire job site, the entire company. Define what you're going to look at. Who, what is it happening to? Particular craft, particular process. Where will the hazard come from? The machinery, the environment, the tools, where we're working from. What are the contributing factors and what started the hazard, the trigger, and then what's going to happen if this occurs, the consequence. And remember, a hazard is never a singular case with a singular effect. And many factors tend to line up to create that perfect storm. It's actually the exact opposite of setting yourself up for success. The world's working against you in small chunks to give you a hazard to see how you're going to overcome that. After analyzing the task or hazard, consider how you're going to control, eliminate, or mitigate this. You've assessed the hazard, the task. You know there's a hazard within it. How are we going to do it? We can engineer that out. Greg Kittle explained that this morning in his earlier session. Engineering controls, I can physically change a machine or process, remove the employee from the situation completely. If that can't be done, and oftentimes administrative controls can be put in place to mitigate that risk, it's going to require, most generally, another task or a job is performed. Evaluate the risk, adopt the appropriate control. Inform everyone of the new change. There again, change is where your incidents and accidents will occur. You've got to periodically review these AHAs. Periodically reviewing your activity hazard analysis ensures they remain current and continue to mitigate the risks they were designed to take care of. Review any AHA immediately when an injury occurred. Something changed and you need to reevaluate the process. Audit the process if something failed. Don't let it happen the second time around. Review any AHA associated with any process or procedure that has changed. If a close call or near miss occurs, make sure it's not the fault of the employee circumventing the process. Oftentimes, shortcuts result in injuries, and it's not actually the fault of a misdiagnosed activity hazard analysis. You've got to get to the root cause of that, or you're going to change a perfectly good procedure for something that wasn't carried out properly. Remember, anytime an AHA is revised, make sure that everyone is retrained on the proper procedure. You're changing how something is typically done. Retraining. You want to mitigate that change effect. A change in condition or circumstance is a key indicator that a hazard is likely to occur. I've said that a couple times already, but I truly believe that. If you don't see the change, if you can't recognize the change, you're going to have a hard time recognizing the hazard. Where there is change, there's uncertainty, and uncertainty comes injury. If you're in a process is complex, very detailed, hire an expert, a procedures writer to help you through the phase. No one can know everything about everything, but get some help. I put in there, for God's sakes, it's someone's safety we're talking about. It is. If I don't want to cut myself short and then injure someone, get some help. I mean, it's check your ego right there. Hire a professional. Oftentimes, insurance carriers will help you through this phase. It's in their best interest to help you. Other examples of fire department, private consultants, government agencies, regulatory boards, OSHA regional offices, private consultant services, and other companies. I like this because it says, because employee safety should not be proprietary. You know, we should share what we know, learn. I think it's our ethical responsibility back to the industry to continue to share this. Better, safer ways to do this. Even with outside help, stay involved in the process and make sure that, you know, your consultant or your procedures writers see what you see and make sure that they are looking at the same possible circumstances you are. You're asking someone else to look at a process for you, so make sure they're seeing it through your eyes. Here's an AHA typical form with the steps listed that I wrote back in 2007 when I was on a job site. You can see in the top, this is just trailers AHA, but it has our environment, location, who prepared it, who's approved it, what's needed, circumstances. That generally focuses on the environment, what we got going on. This part of it, it lists the activity steps or task, what can happen in the second column, so potential accidents or hazards. You're going through line by line, listing what you're going to do and the hazard if you don't do this right. If something was to go wrong, you're openly thinking through this process. And then the third column is how it can be controlled. You've identified what you're going to do, how it could hurt you, and how you're not going to let it hurt you. And on here too, I don't do it in this one, but I've since started to do this. Every so many steps, I like to put in a planned stop. It just says stop. And it's because sometimes you get so focused on checking the task one by one by one. You need a task that says stop, slow down, think about what you're doing. Put that in there. The third part of this is a record of training. Record that it was discussed, record that it was understood, and if you have to go back and do it again, continue to do that until they get it. The key is not that you fill out a perfectly typed document, but that at the end of the process, it was done safely. I'll deviate from the slide here just shortly. I had the privilege of listening to Gene Kranz speak at my brother's commencement. And if anyone doesn't know Gene Kranz, he's voted the second most important person in space exploration. He wasn't an astronaut, though. Gene Kranz was a flight director for Gemini and Apollo missions. He brought the Apollo 13 crew home. We all seen it in the mission. But after the Apollo 1 disaster, on the 27th of January, Monday morning, what's been known as called the Kranz dictum. In it, he vowed that this would never happen again. He established the go, no-go checklist that everyone hears at NASA, and he also coined the phrase, damn it, stop. What that meant, and I quote, he said, the simulators were not working, mission control was behind in virtually every area, and the flight and test procedures changed daily. Nothing we did had any shelf life. Not one of us stood up and said, damn it, stop. He acknowledged that that was an issue. It was moving so fast, so rapidly, so changing, so fluid, the train was running. It's become quite famous now, is he said, stop. Everyone has to just stand up and yell, stop. Well, that kind of stuck with me through this process, because what's that sound like? Every job site I've ever been on, every procedure I've been through. Sometimes you just need to yell, stop, take a minute, assess the situation, and if it's right, continue to plow on through it. Jim Cole is an area manager for Trailer Brothers. He wrote this many years ago, and I still go back and look at it maybe quarterly. It's a fascinating little quick article Jim wrote on safety eyes, and it speaks to the volume of training your mind and your eyes to the process of taking care of someone else. Safety eyes, it's a phrase to refer to a person's skill at detecting unsafe and or risky actions and conditions on a construction project. How do you create a good set of safety eyes? You know your safety rules and realize that they're only minimum expectations. That's the least, the minimum, the bare basics that we can do. Those are rules. We want to be well above that. Sometimes the right thing to do is more rigorous than the written rule. Statistics indicate that the vast majority of injuries that we suffer could have been prevented if the injured person had done the right thing in the first place. Basically, humans are fallible. We like to take shortcuts. We like to get more work done, less amount of time. We don't necessarily think about the risk. You should therefore spend your greatest portion of your observation time watching your crew's actions and behaviors. Embrace the point of view that no matter how well an activity has been planned or is being executed, that there's always some way to make it just a little safer. It's an ever-changing document. There's process, people, technology, environment change daily, change per task, change because of suppliers, change because scope of work. Recognize that everything's changing. embrace the idea that all construction activities can be accomplished safely. We don't have to do anything unsafely. I like that quote. It's Jim saying, I care about you so much, you don't have to do anything unsafe. That speaks volumes. This is another one that just kind of gets you right, punches you right in the heart. It takes character and sometimes courage to stop the operation, regroup, and do the right thing, especially if the unsafe condition will only exist for a short time. Isn't that true? In that short amount of time, bad things can happen. Understand that it's human nature to take the easier approach, even if it's unsafe. Look for situations that seem to work against human nature. Scan the general work area for the organization and general housekeeping. This is a cornerstone for having a safe project. Look for clear, effective access to the work. Can a person move from, to, and through the work area with reasonable speed without the fear of tripping or falling? Look for the fall potential in a work activity. If work is planned properly, employees are protected from falling hazards and are also placed in position to effectively perform that task. Watch the rigging, movements of material with equipment. Don't let complacency, inattentiveness, and sloppy rigging and/or signaling practices go. Speak up. Takes me back to the New York City slogan that says, see something, say something. Safety eyes. Talk to people. Talking about a construction activity with someone while observing it is a great way to generate ideas for improving it. Track the wind. In very little time, wind can turn safe work over calm waters on floats to difficult work conditions that are unworkable. I thought that was pretty amazing that he took the time to process through all of that. Give the methods and sequence of work some considerable thought. It's not just something quick you scribble down. It's actually should be used to identify that task, any risk, and how to completely mitigate it, eliminate it, or deal with it. It's that important of a document. Sometimes a safe operation can be made safer by removing opportunities for injury. Take time to observe. Rome wasn't built in a day, neither were safety eyes. Developing your safety eyes is not an easy task to accomplish on a hectic construction project. Nevertheless, make the effort because it is an important part of the development. It's worth it. Someday you might save someone's life. And really isn't what this is all about. And in honoring the great Yogi Berra, you can observe a lot by just watching. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to take it.
Thank you, Jason. Good job.
Thank you.
So as I was reading through this, I came up with a couple of questions, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. I think Katie's around here somewhere at the microphone. So as you're putting together your AHA, and assume maybe that you missed a step along the way, can you as an individual be held responsible for that, or can anyone else be held responsible for that if something happens?
No, that does come up quite a bit. You do the best you can with identifying the task as you see them that's in front of you. You've been told, you've been working with your crews. There's no penalty of law for missing a step or two or three. The key is you're identifying the task, you're thinking through the process, you're identifying what can hurt you, and steps in place not that to happen. There's no way you could ever be punished or penalized for that.
Okay. Once you have the AHA policy in place, what comes next after that? If it's been successful, you've got it in place, so on and so forth.
If it's successful and it's working and it's steady state, things are going along, the next step, in my opinion, is scope of work planning. What that entails is you go bigger. You take the big job, you break it down into scopes of work, into tasks, you plug the AHAs in with the task, with the tools, how you're going to do it. You get really detailed on the process so they know what they have to do, what they have to use, how they're going to do it, the position of things, and the safety of things. And it gets into this broad scope of work that then can be archived and saved for repetitive tasks going forward. So you only have to do it really once, and then you can use it and modify it forward.
So once these are completed, how do you recommend people utilize these, and where are they kept also, and then lastly, what about future uses of the policy and the documents?
What we do is for everyone we write, they're archived. You can write them in the field, pencil, pen, get it into supervision. They'll archive that in a folder. They'll send it in. We put these in a document, and then we review them. If we know we are going to send people to put cranes together, we will pull out those AHAs that they need and give them copies of it. They can modify those documents how they need because it's changing, but they don't have to start, reinventing the wheel every time. So they can look at these, see, I didn't quite remember it that way, or yes, that's a good point, I didn't do that. They can put all that into their documents, and those just keep growing. Then at the end, that all goes back in that file, and we can do it again. Before you know it, you've got some very solid AHAs where everyone is identified risks that you might not have thought of.
Okay, good. Last question I have, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Are the employees the best resource to put these together or add to these, or is it better that management does that?
I think it's an employee document. There's nothing says that management can't help them along, sit with them, write it, but no one knows the work better than the people putting the work in place. I can write these all day long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the book out, and I'm going to just go through it. Those guys are the ones that's going to do it. They're the one that's going to know that the concrete's unlevel. There's gravel in the way, a ditch on the other side. They can write those hazards in there that I wouldn't be able to. So I definitely think it's an employee. It's a craft. It's in the field. It's in the shops, and it can go up and down. Let that document float. But I don't think it needs to originate in management for it to be effective.
All right. And I'm sure they take more ownership of it
Absolutely.
by doing it that way.
Absolutely.
Very good. So open it up to the audience. Any questions from you guys? Got one back here in the back. Is there another microphone?
How much time do you allow? How much time do you allow your AHAs to take place? Minimum, maximum? Is there a certain amount of time?
No. Guys in the shop will write these, and it could be as simple as they're going to jack up something, a widget, get the plate out, check your hoses, make sure your tonnage matches. It's a 5-minute thing. Other times, we'll tell them, look, we got a crane coming in. It's going to be unloaded here. We need to get it in. We need to get it up. So they might take 4 of them, half a day up in the lunchroom, just pounding it out. Because when they get it done, it's there. We're going to work that plan. This is what they say we're going to follow, and we're going to follow it. And it works for us. Give them the time they need.
Thank you.
Anyone else? More questions?
I figured I'd have to ask a question, seeing as I asked you to volunteer. So, just curious how you would deal with, I don't want to use the word complacency, but if we're using AHAs to train new employees, to bring them on board, we give them essentially work instructions. How do you train the safety eyes in that? We've given them instruction. How do you get them to take the blinders off to make sure they are looking for those changes?
A lot of times your new hires won't know the change from, they won't recognize the change. They've either never done it before or don't know enough to recognize the change. So what we try to do is tell them, if there's any questions through the process, you've got as much power the day you're hired as the guy that's been here 30 years to just yell, stop. What's going on? I don't understand it. And it's okay to say that. If he doesn't know what's going on, his chances of getting injured go straight up. So read the AHA that we've already established so he gets some frame of reference for what's going on. Draw the box for him. Then if he doesn't feel comfortable in that box, then we tell him, ask questions along the way. You don't know what you don't know. Ask us. We'll be more than happy to stop and explain it, because at the end of the day, I want you to go out that gate same way you came in.
Jason, got one here. Go ahead.
Jason, just one question. Do you require your subcontractors to follow the JHAs, or do you let them kind of go their own way, or do you police that, or shall I say Trailer Brothers police that?
In the shop, the job sites, someone else will have to elaborate on. But in the shop, if we know we're bringing CAT in to work with us, we try to get those guys in that process. CAT just as an example, but we try to get our vendors in that process so they recognize our hazards. If they're in and out, walking through, salesmen, we have general site safety plans they read, which is kind of like an AHA for the building, where to stand, what to go, what to look out for. But yes, we try to get them as much as we can to follow the steps, because it's a plan to success in my eyes. So if we can get those involved, do we police it? No. I don't go to the guy working in the yard and say, I want to see your AHA before you start. It's, hey buddy, have we thought about this? You reviewed it. These guys worked on a plan. Let's go over there and huddle up real quick and take 5. Probably needs more improvement, but the fact that we're open to bringing other people in and exposing ourselves and our hazards to them, I think we're further along than what we were.
More questions?
I've been trying to come up with how I want to phrase this question. I don't know that this is really the answer, but I'm wondering how far you drill this down. How basic a process requires an AHA in your organization. The more elaborate, the more inherent danger there might be, safety risks. How far do you drill that down? When do you start preparing them?
The day they're hired is when we prepare the people.
How basic a task?
The basic task, when we first started the process many years ago, 10 years probably, we took basic tasks and wrote AHAs for it. Unloading steel, using a drill press, using a grinder, using hand tools. We had to get a baseline established. So those are what we call core AHAs. Anything after that, and we review those yearly. We'll take a toolbox safety meeting, we'll take 3 of them, we'll go through them. Has anything changed on using a drill? Probably not, but let's refresh. We also have small books that we give mechanics. They're about like that, they fit in your back pocket. And they're point of contact AHAs is what we call them. And you always write the big AHA for the big procedures, but the small ones for loading, let's say we're loading rollers or shivs that take the bearings out in a press. Doesn't require, in my opinion, a huge detailed 20-step process. They use these little books and they jot down, I think it's 5 or 10 tasks, and they jot those down and they talk amongst the 2 of them and they sign that and they put that back in their back pocket. So any task that is step-oriented, more than a couple steps, we have those guys write that AHA.
And so they buy into that process. The 2-week guy and the 20-year guy all buy into it, and that's just part of your core safety values. Then is participating in this process.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said it's smiles every time they do it. But yes, we do have a very high percentage of buy-in, and we do know that on the bigger task, it's almost 100%. Smaller tasks, maybe not so much. There is some complacency issues there. But the bigger task, it's absolutely probably 100%.
A few more minutes. Any more questions? Okay. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.